2, 1. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, the problem with using guilt as the lens or strategy for forwarding an advocacy is that it's very volatile and a fleeting emotion. The intuitive byproducts of feeling shame or guilt are likely to be anger or sadness. The problem with these emotions is that, sure, it might spark change at infancy or at the beginning, but it's not the most sustainable in the long term to really be able to get the advocacy you want. Why? Because there's always another new thing on social media to be riled about, and that was the POI coming from Jaron that was glibly dismissed. So when the basic white bitch that LO talks about, sure, at best for a few days does not buy Starbucks because they're sold on the narrative of Gaza, the holidays then come and there's a new pumpkin spice latte and she buys that, she sits in Starbucks, she goes on social media, and then she feels guilty about another kind of thing that she sees on TikTok or in Instagram, which was at opening agreed with. She's gonna feel bad about, I don't know, the state of the coming Philippine senatorial elections or her own relationship when she sees all the bullshit about Maris Racal and the sweater stuff, or Luigi Mangione and the thirst traps of this guy who killed someone. We think that at best, there's an immense action at the start, but it's likely to be fizzled out when this gets drowned out by other kinds of narratives. Later on, I'm gonna prove even if you get some sort of change, it's not the best to get sustainable steps in the long run. The path to victory of closing government is that we're gonna answer some very important questions that opening missed, and we're going to better directly engage with opening opposition. All my responses will be integrated. The first question I'm going to answer is, what are advocacies for, and what does guilt and shame uniquely do? Opening government jumps the gun and says that it's bad, and at best they prove a sense of urgency. It's precisely because of the things that you see on social media that people are less likely to give a shit, because now you have to pit narrative against narrative, and it becomes this competition of what social movement or problem in society makes people feel the most bad about. And the point in which you feel bad about a lot of fucking shit, you end up reclusing to the ones most proximate to you, and there's a sense of confirmation bias to the things you care about, and you become less likely to care about the counterfactual or other things you wouldn't be exposed to. This response to opening opposition is that when you invalidate a particular individual who, for instance, wants to eat more meat, or, for instance, they want to be able to drink Starbucks, the problem is that you make a metric that they believe to be so personal something bad. And we think that in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with wanting to eat meat, there's nothing wrong with wanting to drink Starbucks, and the narrative is that these people are unlikely to see the bigger picture or get educated through the lens that you want because you already pissed them off. You try and make them feel guilty, either through sadness or anger, and what's likely to happen is that they're likely to lash out at you. They're gonna go into memes and try to dunk on you and say that your social movement is so sensitive. F you, I'm going to go to Wendy's and buy a Baconator, or I'm going to buy a venti really big Starbucks and take it home and look at social media. We think that we question the lens of discourse that happens on opening opposition because we think that when you trigger these emotions and people become defensive, they become less likely to want to join your movement. And this was me filling in the metric of opening government and also opening opposition because they said that, yeah, people want to join the movement. So when you make them feel bad about themselves, it's not like they're going to have this empathetic, cathartic, Buddhist kind of realization and like understand everything about the world. They're likely to feel bad about it and as a consequence feel some shame and not want to actively help. The second question I'm going to answer is a defense of our counterfactual in order to be comparative and explain what's happening, because opening touched on it but didn't fully build it. It was largely underdeveloped. The counterfactual, absent all this guilt-based shaming, are two things. A, finding some sort of strategic compromise when you have discussion with these people and say, hey man, eating too much bacon isn't just bad for the environment, it's also bad for your cardiovascular health because of things like cholesterol and trans fats. So sure, you might not care about John the cow, but you might care about your own interest because you won't be able to see your grandchildren if you continue to eat that lifestyle. That's the lens of compromise. B is that because of that compromise, what we rather have are small, sustainable steps. That is to say, we want the guy who likes bacon to eat less bacon, transition to being maybe flexitarian and trying a plant-based burger every once a month as opposed to eating all of those things. The reason why these are mutually exclusive as opposed to the guilt-based shaming is because when you go with the lens of guilt, you automatically make people take on the defensive. And let's be charitable to opposition. What if they're not as hardcore? What if they're people who are moderate in the middle? Then we think it's just not the most sustainable strategy to make them feel bad about something they otherwise would have been convinced of if you just gave them this education or you had another line of attack in order to get the change you particularly want. The third question I'm going to answer is talking about what really is in the interest of these advocacy groups. Because I reject the metric coming from opening, it's not just about getting them to join the movement. Because if you think about it, why would a guy who doesn't give a fuck about the environment or doesn't care about the cow, why would he want to join your movement? It's less on getting them to join, but getting certain steps to be able to deal with the root cause of the problem, which is environment and also sustainability in terms of being able to source protein and be able to eat other things that are better for our health and better for the environment. Uniquely, closing government fills in a lot of these gaps from opening and also directly responds with the heart of opening opposition case, flipping its effectivity and challenging the lens of guilt as to whether it's really effective or not, and we think probably not. And for all of these reasons, we are very proud to propose.